The following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
If your best run plays are coming off end arounds, there's a problem.
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
The biggest thing that affected Justin Fields was a coaching change, and now he has an offensive coordinator, and he actually will fit a scheme to the quarterback, something we have not seen in a long time.
I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the ass.
When I see Twitter polls and national media and fans weighing in on who is going to have the number one overall pick in the 2023 draft, and I see people commenting Chicago and it's not even close, then yeah, you know what? I'm going to get a little defensive.
I got my ass whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
I don't think the Bears are a 2 to 3 win team. So to answer your question, no. The Bears aren't going to be the worst team in the NFL.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down the Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone. Alyssa Barbieri will not be with us tonight. She is currently staying safe from Hurricane Ian down in Florida, so we wish her and everyone else down there the very best as that hurricane rips through the region. So filling in for Alyssa will be someone who used to do this show like 6 years ago. Let's welcome in Aldo Gandia. Aldo, how you doing? You remember how to do any of this?
Well, I'm glad that we have an outline. I know when I got to talk and stuff like that. But of course I do. This is a show that's near and dear to my heart. A little over 6 years ago, you were a guest on one of my shows, and then I fell in love with your energy and your knowledge and so forth. And we talked about doing this show and doing it as a tribute to your uncle. So it's been fantastic, and I'm glad that I'm here side by side talking football with you.
Yeah, we rarely talk about the actual origin of this show and how it just kind of poof out of nowhere. But yeah, I remember I just jumped on one of the shows on the Barroom Network, and all of a sudden that just somehow snowballed into this. I for better or worse, it snowballed into this. And this is six years later. Here we are still doing the same thing, and people are still listening. So we must be doing something right. I appreciate every one of you who are listening to this, watching this, who listen to the podcast version, watch the YouTube version. It's still amazing to me that people care what I have to say, or at least are entertained by what I have to say. But although we got a great guest lined up to help us better understand the Bears' next test, the New York Football Giants. But just in case this is your first time listening or watching this show, Aldo, give the people a rundown of how Buffone 55 works.
You got it. Absolutely. Buffone 55 has 3 segments. We always begin with our with our guest segment. And this week we'll talk to the senior editor of the Giants Insider newspaper and co-host of their podcast, Jerry Foley. Jerry, by the way, has an outstanding story too about how he got into the business of reporting on football teams. After that segment, we'll then do the B55 segment, and that is when John is asked 5 questions by me, and he's got 55 seconds to respond to each question. That, of course, is in tribute to Doug Buffone, who wore number 55 for 15 seasons with the Chicago Bears. We then finish things up with what we call a free-for-all, Buffone's Basement, a lot of interaction with our people in the chat room. And in the chat room, too, you can, if you've got questions for Jerry, fire them away, and I will get them to him before the end of that segment. So that is it. John, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Aldo. Like you said, our guest tonight is the senior editor of the Giants Insider newspaper and co-host of their podcast. Let's welcome in Jerry Foley to Buffone 55. Jerry, how you doing? Appreciate you being on.
Great, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so let's just jump right into this, because this is a matchup where, let's just face it, the Bears and Giants, where maybe the fans were looking over the schedule at the beginning of the year and they say, hey, That might be one that we can win. And so I want to know, the Giants, they're 2-1, just like the Bears are, maybe unexpectedly, maybe pulling out wins that they weren't supposed to. What's your evaluation of this team through the first 3 weeks, and your evaluation of head coach Brian Daboll since he just came in and this is his first season with the Giants?
I think they've overachieved. I mean, this was at best probably a 6-7 win team, and it still may be. But to win those first two the way they did, and to really hang in there Monday night. I mean, we had our podcast earlier today. We recorded, and my assessment Monday night was in the first quarter we're just not as talented as Dallas, and there's so much lacking talent-wise from this team because of the Dave Gettleman error. And Daboll and Kafka and Wink Martindale, we could not be happier with the coaching staff. I thought, we're not going to get out coached. I don't think we're going to get out coached much anymore, like we've been over the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been. It's just with the salary cap the way it is, and with the talent on this team, they're still a year or two away from really being a serious contender. And when I say serious contender, I mean playoffs. Probably maybe a year away. But right now, I'm just trying to enjoy 2-1. And like you said, you look at week 4 and both fan bases have every right to feel good about this week. So, but one of us is going to come out of that game 3-1 and feeling pretty good. Maybe a little false sense of security because of what's on the horizon, but overall pretty good. I mean, if I had to put a grade on it right now, the Giants are a B+ based on my expectations up to this point.
Now, a big decision they're going to have to make, and probably they're going to take this whole year to evaluate, is at the quarterback position. Yeah. Regarding Daniel Jones, what has been your evaluation of him? What do you think is the feeling around Daniel Jones? Because, we'll get into the wide receiving core in a little bit, but what he's working with and what he's able to do, is there a possibility he could play himself into either a franchise tag or a low value extension? Or do you think this is a reset and he's probably auditioning for his next team?
Guys, if we could not talk about the receiving core, that'd be great. But, going into the season, I thought it was going to be, we're just going to play out the string and then move on. But I got to tell you, man, look, he's had his down moments, especially in first halves this year. But second half of both, the Tennessee game and the Carolina game, he showed a lot. And then the other night, man, if you're watching that game and you came away thinking Jones is the problem, I don't know what the hell game you watched. He had nothing to work with from receiving, other than Barkley. Okay, Barkley's great in the running game, but they zeroed in on Barkley. It was, we're going to stop the run. From the receiving standpoint, you have a guy like Kenny Golladay making $72 million who can't do anything. You have David Sills starting ahead of him. The offensive line, although Andrew Thomas has looked great, the rest of it is in flux. Evan Neal's a rookie. He's going to struggle. He struggled the other night. Glowinski has not played up to where we thought he would be. Feliciano's okay. Left guard is kind of a turnstile with Bredesen and Azudu. So look, going into the season, I would have said this is it for Jones. Now, I think he's showing a lot, and I think they're going to let this play out and see what he actually shows them. They're going to have to be in love with someone in the draft next year to move on, and maybe they are. But look, after seeing what he went through against Dallas, I'm rooting for the guy. I want him to do well. It's just I don't know if it's going to be fair to him the rest of this year with that offensive line and the lack of weapons in the receiving game that he has. So
a lot of this sounds familiar, but
dude, trust me. When we previewed the Bears, it was like, wow, this is a mirror image. Yeah, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that receiving core, because it's one of the few cores where when you put them side by side, you're just like, hey, that's kind of comparable when you look at the Bears and the Giants. So let's go to I want to go to our first user question that's in the chat room. Could we please ask Mr. Foley, with a Sterling Shepard and Kenny Golladay now removed as non-factors for the most part, what is the status of Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney's availability for Daniel Jones into this game?
Kadarius Toney, look, my partner, our beat writer, Chris Bisignano, asked Daboll today, and he basically said, we'll see Sunday. So we don't know. Wan'Dale is probably not going to play. They always say day to day, but he's dealing with a knee issue. So I don't think Wan'Dale's going to play. Right now, I'd actually be surprised if Toney plays, but I don't know. It's going to be David Sills, Kenny Golladay, and Darius Slayton, and Richie James as well. And someone may get elevated from the practice squad. So it is completely in flux. question marks all over. Sterling Shepard tore his ACL. He's out for the year. Very likely played his last game as a Giant, so we all feel bad about that. But yeah, Kenny Golladay has been an absolute disaster of a signing. I'm putting it with Albert Haynesworth if he doesn't do anything more than he has this year. I mean, 20 games as a Giant, no touchdowns, in a time when Chris Myrick, the backup tight end, has 2 in that time, and Andrew Thomas has 1. So the receiving core is a complete mess right now.
And that was going to be kind of my follow-up question. What was the thought process going into this year with this receiving core? Was it Galladay's going to step up and be the number 1, and Tony's going to take that next step in his progression, and then you have these auxiliary players like a Sterling Shepard, and you draft the Wan'Dale Robinson? Was there high hopes for this wide receiving core going into this year, and then it just kind of bottomed out with injuries and not playing up to potential?
There were a lot of question marks, but there was a lot of hope because of the talent there. Kadarius Toney teased us last year, especially in the Dallas game. He had 189 yards, and he looked incredible. He looked uncoverable, and we really haven't seen that since. Wan'Dale Robinson, we were excited about because he was another version of Toney, right? He was very shifty, kind of a gadget guy that we could that could fit into this offense and do what Kafka wants to do. But he hasn't been able to stay on the field. Shepard, he was very steady, but he can't stay healthy. Last year, Achilles. Now ACL, before that concussions. He's always had injury issues. Golladay was the wild card. It's like, well, what did we have here? Like, is he anything close to 2019? And if you think about it, that's really the last year he had that was a good year, right? 2019. So there were high hopes, but I said this on our podcast, I've never been so high on a group of receivers, but also so afraid of it all falling apart. And of course, it's all falling apart. So.
Is Kenny Golladay done after this year? Do they have a potential out on that contract, or what does his future look like?
Yeah, they'll take the hit next year, but they'll have some cap savings. They'll still take a bigger hit. I mean, the contract that they signed was, Dave Gettleman must have been on drugs. It was a horrific contract. Like, if they release him now, I'm pretty sure they pay extra money towards the cap. Like, unless they trade him, they can't do anything with him.
And who's taking that contract?
Right. Who wants Kenny Golladay? It'd be like the Giants would have to pay the rest of it in order to trade him for a 7th round pick. So look, he's not going to be part of the future. This is his last year. And the year can't end fast enough for Kenny Golladay unless he starts showing something. But I think it's in his head now. The other night they threw him a couple passes, he dropped them. So it's not just a situation where he's struggling with the offense and his skills are deteriorating. It seems like this is in his head now, and then the fans got on him. He's public enemy number 1 on that offense. So
I can imagine. Now, you talked about Sterling Shepard with the torn ACL, maybe the last game he plays as a Giant. What's up? And I want to go to this is a user question from Nano CBD. What's up with the Giants' turf? Could it be even worse than what we're used to at Soldier Field? Yeah,
I would always look. Nobody likes the turf at MetLife. But he was just jogging. I mean, that was bizarre what happened. It looked like someone sniped him. I don't know. I don't know if that doesn't happen on grass or even cement. I don't get how that happened. It's easy to blame the turf because Odell didn't like the turf, and there's always injuries on that turf. I mean, but that one was a little strange, but Dable kind of alluded to it that they're going to take a look at that in the offseason, like to look at everything. So I would love to go to grass, but the Jets play there as well. So I don't know if you can. And they tried it in the early 2000s. They had that tray system, and the chunks of grass and dirt would fly up all over the place. So I don't even know if it's possible to go to grass with 2 teams playing there.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept because it's one of the fields where 2 teams play there, and you're just going to keep tearing it up and tearing it up, and so you got to do something. Another kind of a mirror image on, between the Giants and the Bears they have running backs who, could be coming into the last year of their contract or looking for extension. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, a huge centerpiece of that offense, but has also dealt with his own injury problems. Is this a guy who's playing for an extension in New York, or is this maybe not part of the long-term plans with the new regime there?
I think if he keeps having the year he has, it's going to be very hard to let him walk. There are some rumors about him getting traded. We don't know anything about that, but my prediction has been I guess it's not popular and a lot of people don't feel this way. He's the face of the franchise. And if he has a good year, I think they try and sign him just because he's on the team already. Everyone says, okay, 2nd overall pick for running back. Yeah, I get that. But we did that already. Like, he's on our team now. So who do you replace him with? You let him walk. And then what? Even if you trade him for a 1st rounder, Is your first rounder going to be anywhere near him, or you're going to pick up a fourth rounder that can do what he does? So look, man, maybe it's against the odds, but I think that they'll try and work something out with him if he has the year that he's had so far and continues to have that. My belief is they're going to try and figure it out with Saquon. I know that's not popular, but I don't know how you let a talent like that just walk away when you have him on your team already.
And you'd be hard pressed to find a team who will give up a first rounder for a running back. So
and to pay him the money and maybe to pay him the money that he thinks he's going to get as a running back. They just don't pay running backs like that, So right. I just think the stars could align for once with the Giants, where they keep their star player, and it's better for everybody. So we'll see.
And you keep talking about the year he's having. To let our listeners know, is this the Saquon of old? Is he turning it back on? Is he fully back from those injuries?
Better than ever. I mean, he's running between the tackles and he's running hard too. I mean, Dable has made him even a better runner. I mean, look, we are ecstatic with Brian Dable. I don't care if they don't win another game the rest of the season. I think the Giants finally found the right coach. And I thought that way Judge's first year, and then what the hell happened last year with the 2nd and 8 from your own 5, and you did a quarterback sneak and did a lot of weird things. But I think they had the right coach with Dable, and he's made Saquon a better runner because he's running between the tackles now. He's not looking for that home run, but he's still hitting that home run once he gets to that second level. So Saquon has become a better player with Dable, and he's flourishing in this offense.
Let's keep going around the offense just a little bit longer. Obviously, they moved on from Evan Ingram at tight end. What's the early evaluation and return on rookie Daniel Bellinger? Is this a guy that's going to be on the radar for Bears fans, or is it a work in progress?
He's a steady player right now because he's a rookie, but he's I said today he's the most explosive player in their passing game by default. Look, he's a smart kid. He's blocking. He's a good blocker. I think he's maybe a little better blocker than we previously thought coming out of the draft. But look, so far so good. A tight end's a hard position to learn as a rookie, and he's doing very well. I mean, he's the number one tight end, and we didn't know how it was going to go with him, but pleasantly surprised with this draft class so far. Once they're on the field, I should say. So, Bellinger, look, he has a bright future ahead of him. He's just got to stay healthy and kind of keep at it. But so far, so good with him.
Last question about the offense. You mentioned the offensive line a little bit. Daniel Jones was sacked 5 times in that loss to the Cowboys. What's your evaluation of this line? It sounds like there could be some weak spots for the Bears defensive line to get some pressure. And I know Bears fans know that the Bears like to try to get pressure with just the front 4. They don't like to blitz too much right now in this current year. Are they going to be able to get their front 4 with some pressure there?
Probably, yes. Andrew Thomas has been spectacular, and he's really turned it on. Like, if they did a redo of that draft, I still take Thomas 4, even with Wirfs in the draft. Like, Andrew Thomas is coming into his own now. He is a, God willing, going to be a block for us, a block of granite on the left side there for the next 10 years. Then it gets interesting. Next to him, it's kind of a rotation, like I said, of Izudu, Bredesen and Shane Lemieux. He's not healthy. He can't get on the field. He really didn't play last year much. He hasn't played since his rookie year. So we still don't know what we have there. At center, we have John Feliciano, he's okay. I mean, he's a nice stopgap, but not the future. Mark Lewinsky's been a disappointment so far at right guard. We thought we'd have more than him, more from him, I should say. Micah Parsons completely ran through him the other night and made him look like, the right guards of the last 4 to 5 years with this team. And look, Evan Neal's going to be great, I think. But he struggled the other night. He was pretty good the first 2 games, but right tackle rookie against DeMarcus Lawrence, he gave up 3 sacks, and he was bummed out after the game and said he played the worst game of his life. He never played like that before. But I don't, even as a fan, I don't get mad at Evan Neal for not playing well his rookie year against DeMarcus Lawrence. It's a work in progress. So the line is on the right track to improving, and they have improved somewhat, but there's still a long ways to go. It's far from a finished product.
Testament to Bobby Johnson as the OL.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, that alone, that's what I mean. Like, this staff, I feel like we're in the 21st century now with coaching. Like, they know what they're doing. So
we're aspiring to that as well in Chicago. That has not been the feeling the last, right. You know how many years. Yeah. Let's switch sides of the ball. The one thing that has been working for the Bears is the run game. Last week, Khalil Herbert racked up 157 yards on 20 carries in place of the injured David Montgomery. is there going to be opportunities for the Bears to run again, or do the Giants key in on that, and are they able to stop the run?
Well, if Leonard Williams doesn't play again like Monday night, then yes, absolutely you do. And plus, look, we released, Blake Martinez, who was our best middle linebacker or inside linebacker, I should say. They said it was an amicable split. It is what it is, but he's gone now. But now you replaced him with Austin Calitro. That's quite a drop off in talent. Now they drafted a kid, Micah McFadden, from Indiana, who's a rookie, and he's coming on, but your inside linebackers now are Tay Crowder, who's okay, and he has his moments, and Austin Calitro. And so without Leonard Williams and with just Dexter Lawrence there, and a bunch of guys who are filling in like DJ Davidson, Nick Williams, you're going to have your opportunities running up the gut. I think on the edge we're a little better, sealing the edge with guys like Thibodeau coming back, but when he wasn't playing, O'Shane Zimenez, who came out of nowhere, played really well, and Jihad Ward really sealed the edge on that defensive line. So if Leonard Williams doesn't play Sunday, I feel a lot worse about our chances against your running game.
Now let's go to something that's not as effective so far this year. That would be the Bears passing game. They're still searching for that passing game. Will there be opportunities for the Bears to find some holes in that secondary? Specifically, I guess Cordell Flott and kind of going through that secondary. Where could there be some weak spots?
Yeah, he didn't practice today. So, Fabian Moreau is going to be activated again probably for this Sunday off the practice squad. That's it. It's that second cornerback spot. I mean, Giants have a pretty good safety combo with Xavier McKinney's excellent. And Julian Love's kind of somebody who can do it all. Very happy with the Giants safeties. And Adoree Jackson's playing his butt off at first corner. So, it's 3 out of 4 positions kind of locked down, but that fourth one is just a huge question mark. Even with Cordell Flott there. I mean, he's a rookie. He's very thin. He's a pretty good tackler, but he's learning the pro game. Cornerback, 3rd round pick. That's hard to come in and start. But look, Dane Belton is that third safety. He's done pretty well in his 2 games. So I would say the second cornerback spot. And look, Cole Kemet probably could have some success against our linebackers. So that's probably it.
Bears fans are waiting for that Cole Kmet breakout game. Had a couple catches last week, got off the schneid, but they're still waiting for that 6-catch game for maybe with a touchdown on that as well. Yeah. Another thing that's been concerning Bears fans has been the pass protection. So how's that defensive line of the Giants looking, and are they going to keep creating problems for Justin Fields as he drops back, and is he going to get flushed out of the pocket?
Well, it's funny because the first 2 games, the pass rush looked decent. And O'Shane Zimenez, a guy I mentioned before, who is in his 4th year, came on out of nowhere. We didn't think he's going to make the team. And so I mean, like the Dable effect, like this kid's playing great and dunked Gatorade on the head coach game 1. I'm like, this kid went from, I can't believe he's on the team, to he's the one dunking Gatorade on Dable for his first win. So he and Jihad Ward looked good in the first 2 games. And everyone was excited that Thibodeau and Ojulari came back last game. And Ojulari, other than forcing 2 holds, they didn't do much. So Giant fans were all excited, kind of acting like Taylor and Banks were coming off the bench. And these guys hadn't played in preseason much. So that's the importance of preseason as well. Like, they didn't have much snaps. And Thibodeau's a rookie, and Ojulari's in his 2nd year. So that as the season goes on, they'll be fine. But even that's good. That might take some time too. So it's just that, Martindale's just going to send the house. And whether your line can protect or not, he's going to send bodies, and it does not matter who's playing on the outside. And I Chris says this all the time, my partner. Every Ravens fan I've spoken to has said he will blitz if you are covering the wide receiver. So get ready for that. Get ready for Justin Fields rolling out a lot, having to roll out and run for his life, because Martindale will send the house. But we'll see if they can generate something with less than 7 guys rushing the passer. But
that should make for an interesting concept, because that means quick decisions, getting the ball out quick, and a young quarterback sometimes they get the wrong read, that can cause turnovers. So we'll see how that plays out, because it also could mean there could be some guys running deep freely on that zero coverage every once.
Well, Monday night Cooper Rush was a master at it. I mean, I was almost saying, like, oh, stop blitzing, but Wink doesn't stop blitzing. With Fields, I'd rather blitz just because he's a younger quarterback and hasn't seen all this. But with Cooper Rush, it was, oh my God, sit back a bit. Don't send everyone. And he was killing them. He was eating them alive.
Something to keep an eye on. Speaking of Justin Fields, we have a really interesting question from the chat room. This one comes from Laz. Jerry, in the 2nd season now after the Giants-Bears trade last year, Who do you think's winning that trade right now? The Bears got Justin Fields, and I believe the Giants, they get Neal and Tony out of that, and then somebody else.
Was that part of the that wasn't Aaron Robinson?
Ellerson Smith, Neal, and Tony.
Oh, maybe? Ellerson Smith hasn't played. Look, Tony hasn't done nearly what we thought. I mean, so I'll say the Bears, but we had a shot at Micah Parsons or Slater, and we didn't. Rashawn Slater, and we didn't take him. We traded down. You know, obviously the easy pick there was Slater, but the let's do it pick was Micah Parsons. And this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking. This is what every Giant fan felt. And we trade down and take Tony, who probably should have gone in the second or third round. So, I don't know what Fields is going to become. Right now, I guess it's advantage slightly Bears. But if Fields doesn't work out, then it's a push.
And say, is it almost more of a loss for the Giants because of who they didn't take?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's more of a loss that we traded down and ignored two perennial Pro Bowlers. So, yeah.
Listen, we have our own plethora of draft catastrophes. We can relate. I feel like this is these are kindred spirits. These two franchises, at least.
Yeah, I mean, not to go off on it, but you have a list of, when you're doing your mock drafts, you have a list of 15 guys if you're picking 10th, and you go, if we get any of these guys, I'm ecstatic. And we got none of them. And it's just, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Dave Gettleman. Appreciate that.
A little parting shot on the way out, right?
Yeah, thank you. Right before you go to Cape Cod, screw us one more time. Thanks.
I was going to ask, what is the general consensus over Gettleman? Because he's the guy who, he came in with this, kind of a emboldened kind of guy, goes in and gets Daniel Jones, and then he does everything that he's, all these personnel decisions, plus trades out right before on his last draft. What's the lasting legacy of Dave Gettleman there?
I gave him credit for the 2020 draft in a recent article because he took Thomas and McKinney. You got to give him credit for that. He got Cam Brown, who's an excellent special teams player. There are a few other guys, Lemieux. You don't know what he's going to become. I don't want to give up on Parrott yet. So the 2020 draft was okay, but overall, he's looked at as Ray Hanley of the GMs. I mean, he is just. What's the opposite of building a statue of someone? The complete opposite of that is what people want to do to Dave Gettleman. He is hated, makes Jerry Reese look like George Young. He is not popular among Giant fans. I'd say 99.9% cannot stand the guy. And look, he was pretty arrogant in press conferences, like, "Oh, what? Were you guys even questioning me? I know what the hell I'm doing." Like, it was everything. It wasn't just the horrible free agency, mostly horrible drafting, horrible cap, taking care of the salary cap. It was the arrogance that came with it. It was just, wow, this guy just thinks he's, he knows everything and nothing. So
he had his hand in the Joe Judge hiring then, of course, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. But look, Belichick gives a recommendation as well. So that goes a long way. I mean, I don't blame him for Judge. I blame him more for Pat Shurmur. I mean, saying he's the adult in the room. And Pat Shurmur was really an offensive coordinator. That's all he ever has been. And it was a waste of 2 years. I don't fault Gettleman for trading Odell. I fault him for what they did with it. It was Jabril Peppers, Dexter Lawrence, and O'Shane Ximines. Now Ximines is coming on, and Dexter Lawrence is a good player, but I just felt like, you passed on a guy like Metcalf in that draft. You could have done some good things, and trading up for DeAndre Baker. Woo. Taking Jones at 6, it's like, man, you talk about questionable moves. Gettleman was loaded with him, and then he had some horrible free agent signings, Nate Solder, Omame. But I don't know if you guys are trying to send me to a psychologist for this, but
misery loves company, so we have to keep stirring this pot a little bit. For some positivity here, what is the early returns on Joe Shane? Because obviously the Bears have a new GM, the Giants have a new GM. What are the thoughts on the new GM with the Giants?
He can do no wrong because of the situation he was given, especially with the cap and the talent. We love the first 2 picks. We question the second pick, Wan'Dale Robinson, but then you see his stats and you think, all right, they know what they're doing. And then some other guys have worked out better than we thought. Like Azudu could be a player at left guard. Cordell Flott looks decent. So he did a lot of things. And then Dane Belton looks good. He drafted a kid, Darian Beavers, who tore his ACL, but looked great in preseason. So draft-wise, it looks, you don't want to grade drafts the same year, but early returns are in and they're pretty good. He got a hold of the salary cap. Got it under control. He had to cut James Bradbury, which we kind of all knew was coming. The only questionable thing they did so far, really questionable, was parting ways with Blake Martinez. That was strange. Everybody liked Blake Martinez. He wasn't voted team captain again. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that was the only move where everyone's like, well, that might come back to bite you. But look, we're ecstatic with Shane and Dable, and it reminds me of Cain and Abel. I just always think of that. But we're ecstatic with Shane and Dable, and we're just happy to move on from Dave Gettleman. So
biblical references, I like it. That's what people come here for. Before we get into the prediction of the game, I do want to. We always ask our guests about a little bit of special teams. Is there someone that Bears fans can keep an eye on, whether it be a long snapper, a gunner, a punt returner, a kicker, a holder, whatever it is? Anyone to highlight with the Giants special teams?
Oh, our most valuable player, Graham Gano. Guys, unbelievable. Oh, my God. And the Scottish Hammer, Jamie Gallan. Yeah, the punter. No, I mean, look, the special teams have been the Giants do that short kick a lot, and it burns. It comes back to bite them. I don't know why they do it. I complain about it on the podcast. Graham Gano can kick it into the stands. Just concede the 25. Stop trying to get them at the 15 or the 20. It doesn't work. Cam Brown's a good special teams player, but beyond that, it's just the coverage has been spotty. There's no return game. Richie James is the punt returner. Gary Brightwell, a 6th-round pick, I believe, from last year, is the kickoff returner, but I think he's only had a couple returns. So, we're not going to hurt you in the return game, and our coverage is not that great. But we have a good punter, and our kicker is one of the best in the league. And Cam Brown is a really good gunner. But if the Giants do that short kick, you should be happy because you'll probably get it up to the 40.
And when you have two teams like this playing, it could come down to a special teams play to make the difference. Now, I will ask you, what is your prediction for this game? I believe the Giants right now are about 3-point favorites, but I think you get that just for being at home. So if it's on a neutral site, people, the Sharps think this is kind of an even matchup. What do you think comes of this game, factoring in the injuries, who could play, and the fact that it is in New York? What do you think the outcome of this game could be?
I don't want to feel overconfident because the Giants have no right to, but just the fact that it's home, the crowd was louder than it's ever been Monday night. Martindale's going to send the house at Fields. I like that matchup. I like, our offenses are mirror images of each other, except we have a better left tackle. That's kind of the way I look at it. And we have Barkley. I think it'll be a close game and then maybe like a pick six. I just say Giants by 10 just because it'll be a late touchdown that does that. It's not going to be like the Giants are up by 10 the whole game. I just think it'll be a mistake. Maybe Fields makes at the end and the Giants score. So I said 27-17.
One of those things where the Bears are on the drive to try to take the lead at the end, and it's a pick six that kind of capitalizes.
Something like that. And it could happen the other way. I feel like the game will be a 10-point game because of a late mistake by somebody. I'll just go with the Giants because they're home. And I do like the Martindale versus Fields matchup.
Very fair assessment. Very fair assessment. Well, Jerry, before we get you out of here, can you let our listeners and viewers know, first of all, I heard you have a pretty interesting story how you got into this, and then let us know how people can find your stuff and listen to all your work.
Yeah, sure. So www.thegiantinsider.com for our newspaper. We still have a newspaper. I know it's amazing.
Love it.
And you can get it on Magster on the digital subscription, Magzter. And we have a podcast on pretty much every platform. Our Twitter account is Giant Insider. And I got involved in this by writing into the newspaper years ago. As a fan, kept writing in. They couldn't ignore me anymore. And the editor had me write weekly and then said, can you do more? But, by 2015, I was writing half the paper. And then in 2018, he said, do you want to edit it? I said, yeah. He goes, all right, I'm going to step aside. So I brought in a friend of mine who I also met through the newspaper. Now he's the beat writer and we do this together. So pretty amazing. If you have a passion, guys, go for it. And you never know what could come of it.
Persistence. It is key. Persistence. I love it. Jerry Foley, senior editor of the Giants Insider newspaper and the co-host of their podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, giving us a good breakdown of who the Bears are going to be up against on Sunday. And we'll talk to you whenever these two teams are inevitably in the NFC Championship game.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Awesome.
All right, take care. We'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. I am Aldo Gandia. Great interview. And now it's time for our segment with John called B55. I will ask John 5 questions. He has 55 seconds to respond to each question, and that's in honor of Doug Buffone, my childhood hero. I watched Doug Buffone play at Soldier Field and Wrigley Field, actually, for one season, and was always a great admirer. And he was, of course, a legendary broadcaster and media person after his playing career was over. John, are you ready for some 5 questions?
I am, and let me say that I'm very jealous that you actually got to watch him play. He was retired by that way before I was born, so that's very jealous that you actually got to see him in person play.
I tell you, it was easy to see what an impact he made on this team and how he helped Dick Butkus roam around the field and create big plays. I think a lot of times Doug doesn't get the credit he deserves for elevating the play of his teammates and particularly his fellow linebacker, Dick Butkus. So hopefully one day, people will recognize that. The national media will recognize that. It's long, long overdue.
No, not going to hear any arguments out of me on that one.
All right, you ready to get started?
Let's go.
All right, so I'm interested in your takeaways from this game. Everybody knows that a win is a win, and that's a good thing. But there's been a lot of people who have been kind of upset about the quality of victory. So I'm going to give you 55 seconds, and you answer the question, what were your takeaways from this game? And take it away.
Well, it's clear that the Bears can run the ball, and their passing game is spastic at best. Those two things kind of play into my biggest takeaway. The Bears are not going to be overly aggressive in a lot of games this year. They're okay running the ball on 3rd and long. They're okay letting the last minute or so of the first half run out, even though they have 3 timeouts. And I'm not trying to be disparaging here. They won the game that way. I know a lot of Bears fans are acting like they lost the game because they didn't win it in a certain way, and to an extent, I completely get it. You aren't going to play the Texans every week, and eventually you're going to have to win a shootout. But I see a plan in place, and I imagine we'll see something similar against the Giants on the road on Sunday. Matt Eberflus has his vision for this team, and they're going to stick to this game plan, and this could help them squeeze out 6 to 8 games this season. And so that was my takeaway. But watch, I say all that, and they'll probably throw the ball 45 times this week against the Giants.
Do you think that a win can be so ugly that it almost is dispiriting for a team?
I think it's all about the context of it, because if you win that game and it's incredibly ugly, you can feel bad about it. But what if you would have lost that game? You feel even worse about it. There's nothing to build on. Like I've been saying on this show and on other shows, is the fact that we're not used to the Bears winning ugly. We're used to them losing ugly and then being mad about it. So we're not sure how to react whenever they're able to pull out some of these games. Like, they still didn't look great, but they're 2-1. So should I be angry? I'd much rather be able to build off of a win, clean up the things that are very obviously need cleaned up, but in the same breath, you won the football game. And I think that that's not something that we're used to in the last few years.
One of the odd things, one of the incredible things about pro football is, you're 3 weeks into the season and you can rightly say, hey, there's 14 more games. There's a lot of season left. But you blink your eyes and all of a sudden you're in the middle of the season, and you blink for the second time and you got a couple games left, and things can go by pretty fast, right?
Oh man, we wait. It seems like the off season takes 6 years, and then the season takes 2 weeks. This season just flies by, and we all talking about it's a long season, and it is a long season. But whenever you're into it, and you just like everything leads up to that game, oh crap, okay, it's on to the next game, and before you know it, you're looking at the Super Bowl, and so things move very quickly.
Indeed. All right. Let's get on to question number 2. So the biggest talking point coming out of Sunday's game was the performance by Justin Fields, which he himself described as trash. He was 8 of 17 for 106 yards and 2 picks. John, what is your best guess as to what is going on with Justin Fields? And remember, it's just 55 seconds.
I think I was a victim of the moment at halftime because I was kind of mad about them not trying to score. So I almost gave in that the team didn't trust Justin Fields. But I think it just played into the overall conservative game plan. But yeah, he didn't play well. Those 2 picks were on him. They were bad throws. But I still think this is a collection of things. I do believe they're treating this like Justin Fields' rookie season. So the training wheels are still on. I believe there are pass protection problems with the line. And of course, the weapons aren't there. I don't see this as a lack of confidence in the quarterback. And people once again are saying that the front office's lack of action in the offseason is somehow linked to a lack of confidence in their quarterback. Did you want them to shell out $80 million on Christian Kirk? Did you want them to shell out $75 million on a 31-year-old Teron Armstead? Did you want them to liquidate their already depleted draft capital to trade for a receiver? If you want to make the argument that they should have drafted a receiver, that's fine. But I can't see that they didn't have it in for Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with your take on that. You know, it's unfortunate that he was brought into a situation, Justin Fields, when you had a lame duck head coach and offensive coordinator. And so you forced him to, you really put him behind the 8 ball there, or whatever the proper expression is. How can you develop a quarterback when you sort of have a feeling that the head coach you have hired for this team isn't getting the job done, and you're just it's a recipe to sputter along and really put your quarterback into a very, very tough position. I really feel for Justin Fields. You know, perhaps a lot of the quarterback problems in the history of the Chicago Bears have been because of management and poor decisions by the management team. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's 100% right, because the stars never align at the same time. You can do that. You could do the same thing with Trubisky, where he had to come in with John Fox, and then they had to get rid of him, and he had a new system and a new coach and a new coordinator. And then they're doing the same thing with Fields. They give him 1 year with Matt Nagy's system, and then they have to upheave everything, and they screw up the cap. And so Ryan Poles wasn't going to come in here and just try to put on a bunch of Band-Aids. He saw that they had to clear a bunch of cap space if they wanted to build this team from the ground up. And who's going to suffer the most from that is your quarterback, who they don't have a lot of weapons with. But what else were you supposed to do? Were you just supposed to just keep kicking the can down the road and spend a lot of money on a Christian Kirk, or you're supposed to just shell out more money than what you have and make all these void years, so you're going to be absolute trash by the time you'd have to pay Justin Fields? So there weren't a lot of options for the front office, and unfortunately, Justin Fields is going to have to go through this year where he doesn't have a lot to work with. But if you're the eternal optimist, and that's usually not me, but I'll play one right now, is if he can get through this year with these weapons and have any kind of success, guess what he can do when he actually has an actual arsenal of weapons around him? If they go and they draft the wide receiver, or they go and they get one in the offseason, whether it be through trade or through free agency, what happens if he actually has a really good wide receiving core and a dependable weapons? Maybe he's going to be great. And this is just iron sharpening iron, trying to be positive here, but But I do feel for Justin Fields because he was dealt a pretty crappy hand. But I think your point is very valid. It's because of the way that management always seems to, that they don't ever seem to align these things in the right way.
Yeah. Well, and when we get to Buffone's basement, I've got a soundbite from Justin Fields talking about a particular play that he was locked in on Darnell Mooney, and that's been part of his problem too. Is that some of the decision making that he's made might be impacted because he's got a favorite receiver and he's staring him down, and the defense is aware of what's going on, and it's led to poor performances so far by both of those guys, Mooney and Fields.
Yeah, no one's benefiting from that. But
exactly. Let's get on to question number 3. Well, one part of the offense that didn't struggle was the run game. The Bears ran for over 280 yards, with Khalil Herbert rushing for 157 yards on 20 carries in relief of the injured David Montgomery. John, what did the performance tell you about the Bears' run game, and what could happen if David Montgomery misses a stretch of games with this ankle injury, which scares me? But you've got 55 seconds.
Well, it's pretty obvious that the Bears can run the ball, thank God, because if they couldn't, who knows where they'd be. But Khalil Herbert is certainly making his case. He was the more effective running back in week 1 against the 49ers, and he came through in a big way against the Texans. The aspect that is the most interesting to me, however, is how the future of the position is going to develop. If David Montgomery is out for a number of weeks, and it seems like he's going to be back sooner than some of us originally thought, but does that act as a big-time audition for Khalil Herbert? Let's not forget, David Montgomery doesn't have a contract after this year. And if Khalil Herbert balls out, maybe Matt Eberflus and Ryan Foles see a very cheap, effective running back, and they don't necessarily have to allocate $8 to $10 million to David Montgomery next year. That would be cemented if Treston Ebner plays well as the number 2 back, and then the Bears would have a solid, incredibly cheap backfield. Both of those guys combined are making about $1.5 million. So this should be an interesting development.
Well, I think you nailed it there when you brought up Treston Ebner, because if Treston Ebner proves that he can be a good complementary back to Khalil Herbert, then David Montgomery really will be looking for a new team next season. I hate to say that, but the NFL now has become kind of a factory system of using running backs and getting some wear and tear on them and then passing them on to somebody else and acquiring a cheaper version. There's just so many good middle round running backs coming out of college who can catch the ball and run effectively. And I think that the value of running backs has dissipated greatly. Do you miss those days, John, where Walter Payton was getting the ball 35 times a game?
I miss those elite running backs that could make a case for MVP every year. And it's just, I mean, we're just not there anymore. And it's just, we're probably not going back to that anytime soon, because Aldo, if you look at it, name me one team that shelled out a ton of money to their running back and it worked flawlessly. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's making a buku bucks in Carolina. They're not doing anything. I think Alvin Kamara's too. He's a great running back and he's still producing, but they're not winning anything. Right. The whole Lev Bell thing, the Steelers are smart to let him, like, okay, go find a big contract. He went to the Jets and he was there, what, a year? Mm-hmm. And so but if Montgomery's willing to take that 8 to 10 range, maybe they can have that conversation. But as soon as you start creeping up into that 12, 13, 14, because Derrick Henry got paid, and he's maybe a step slower than he used to be because he's taking so many hits throughout the season, and he got hurt last year. So this is a high collision position, and if that's the highest paid guy on your offense or one of the highest paid guys on your offense, you're taking a pretty big risk that they're going to be available all 17 games. So I understand the business of it now and why teams might be a little more hesitant. And I see Joe Mixon got paid. Are we going to make the outlier then? Okay, we're gonna 1 out of 10. So but at the same time, there needs to be an understanding that this is a business, and I don't think Ryan Poles is in the business of paying a lot of money to running backs.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, by the way, that Khalil Herbert did not win Offensive Player of the Week honors. I mean, what was it? 150 plus yards, 2 touchdowns.
You got the FedEx Ground Player of the Week or whatever, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get that decision at all. I think Mr. Herbert got robbed, but we'll let his agent deal with that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
exactly. Let's go on to question number 4. An interesting report that surfaced right before last Sunday's kickoff was that the Bears would be active in the wide receiver market before this year's trading deadline. It's clear that the Bears could use some help. Oh, man, is it ever clear? But do you think it's possible? 55 seconds. Take it away, brother.
I don't think so. I mean, now with Pringle out for the year, who knows what the plan is, but I think it kind of goes against what we've seen Ryan Poles do. I can't imagine him giving up draft capital to go after a team's number 2 or 3 receiver, and I highly doubt any team is going to part with an elite receiver midseason because most of those teams have playoff aspirations. Why would you dump one of your best assets? So I just scanned a few teams that might have moderately interesting trade options, and to be honest, there really aren't that many. Would Pittsburgh part with Chase Claypool? Would the Jets part with Elijah Moore? Would Houston let go of Brandon Cooks, even though they signed him to an extension this year? I just don't see it. I can maybe envision them trading for a disgruntled high-end receiver for a couple of mid-round picks in the offseason and then take a wide receiver in the first round, and then things get turned around with that wide receiving core. I'm just not sure who they could bring in this year that is a true upgrade from what they currently have. Plus, they don't throw the ball that much anyway.
That's right. Yeah, we've got to hope that some of these injured receivers get back as quickly as possible. And N'Keal Harry it will be eligible to come back Monday, but we'll see where he is with the injury. I saw Coach Eberflus's press conference today, and I really enjoy listening to him talk about why even ask him about injuries now? I mean, he gives away nothing, nothing at all. I mean, you have to come up with a creative way to ask him about injuries and maybe trip him up or something like
very
that.
Very Belichickian almost
Exactly.
in the Stonewall. He could have been a PR professional the way that he stonewalls some of those answers.
He really is. And sometimes he'll say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Yeah, he heard you. He's just formulating
his response. Trust me, I've been around that business a long time. Ask for the question again so you have an extra 5 or 10 seconds to think about your response.
Yep,
very wily. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Very wily. But I've got some thoughts on potential wide receiver pickups. We'll leave that for Buffone's basement.
All ears. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There aren't going to be any names that you're going to go, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's just not there. All right, let's get on to question number 5. As you said in the open, not many people had the Bears sitting at 2-1 after 3 games. The Bears have been a punching bag for the national media, many which saying that the Bears were the worst team in the league, and some have not let up on that, despite their record. If the Bears are able to beat the Giants Sunday, will a 3-1 record be enough to get the national media off the Bears' back? I'm throwing away that 55-second clock. You, sir, take it away.
One would think that if a team is 3-1, they cannot be thought of as the worst team in the league, let alone a CFL team or whatever the hot take is this week or however they're disparaging the Bears. It's just a lazy narrative. Everyone that took under 60 seconds to formulate an opinion saw that the Bears lost Allen Robinson, Akeem Hicks, and Khalil Mack. Then they hired a defensive head coach. Well, then we got to get on the Bears are tanking train. Listen. A-Rob had a terrible year last season. Hicks missed 8 games and Khalil Mack missed 10 games, and that team won 6 games with Matt Nagy. I'm not knocking those players, but it's not like they were the driving force behind all 6 wins. How do you figure that this team is going to be 4 or 5 games worse after adding 2 young starters to the defense and having Justin Fields enter his second year with a competent coordinator and play caller? But we do know that some analysts will go down with the ship with their awful takes. So they could be framing the Bears like this regardless of the record. It's going to be a long season. We'll be back with Buffone's Basement right after this.
Ellis Hall, since I came here, has been expanded twice, and both times after we were gone, by the way. So we never got it. But I mean, it was tiny.
Do you think that Olin Kreutz would politely ask you to leave the weight room because it was so crowded?
I told you what Olin used to say to me.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
No, and that was at 5:00 when there's no players around.
Olin is
Get the out of my weight room. And I go,
I think I got a commercial.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. It's time for Buffone's Basement. That's where we just go into a free-for-all. Aldo and I, we're going to talk about anything and everything. Throw in your topics in the chat if you want us to hit on it. But Aldo, you teased something in that last segment about potential trade targets for the Bears. I love transactions. I love tinkering with things. I love the franchise mode in Madden because I can just tinker with everything. I can move this, I can trade this, I can bring this over here, move this money over here. Tell me, who are the Bears? Who could the Bears be bringing in that are, and like you said, I'm sure they're not going to blow my socks off. But who are some of these names that you're thinking of?
Frankly, I had not heard of these guys since I did my research.
Oh, good. This is a good start. Yeah, this is gonna be great. We're gonna be the number two receiver. Yeah.
So I looked at two teams, of course, that the Bears have some familiarity with, and so I started with Ryan Poles, of course, familiarity with the Kansas City Chiefs. And they're not going to trade any of their 5 receivers on their active roster. So I looked at who are the wide receivers on their practice squad, because that's not even a trade. That's just going in there and plucking the guy. And so one of the guys that intrigued me is a 6'2", 210-pound wide receiver who is in his 4th year, but he's jumped around a couple of teams, but this guy has that kind of potential. And actually, he was on the active roster week 1. And so what Kansas City is doing with him, they're using him some weeks and not using him others. He's kind of a safety valve for them for injury purposes. But this guy has the big body, as you can see here on a short out pass. And these 3 highlights from the first preseason game of the season kind of shows what he's good at. Look at how he takes the punishment, does the slant pattern right at the safety, takes the hit, and proudly spikes the ball or lets the ball go. And then he can also get behind a cornerback. So Doris Fountain might be somebody that Ryan Poles could say, you know what? I'm not going to trade any of my draft picks or draft assets. I'm going to pick this guy because I remember him or I've done my work on him. So that's my first name. I see you laughing, and so I know what's coming. Let me have it.
I love the creativity, and I love the amount of thought you put into this, the familiarity with the Chiefs, and let's look at the practice squad. Let's go find their preseason highlights. It's just I'm not laughing at you in general. I'm laughing at the fact that this is where we're at now. Let's see how deep we can dig into people's practice squads and see if we can find a gem in week 4 because we don't have anything left.
I'm a Bears fan. That's what I've been looking for my entire life.
This is what we got to do. Who's a practice squatter that could potentially be the number 3 guy on the Bears? What do we got? So,
all right, I got.
Do you have anyone that's on an active roster?
Well, this guy was a week ago, but he's back on the practice squad, and maybe this is a name you've heard because he's actually had some fairly decent NFL seasons, but he did not play in 2021. He was on the practice squad the entire year with the Colts last season. It's Kiki Cote. You probably remember him because he was I wouldn't say a favorite target of Deshaun Watson, but he was a frequent target of Deshaun Watson, kind of averaging 30 catches a season in his heyday with the Texans. You see him here catching a touchdown pass despite being well guarded. Kiki Cote is a possibility. You know, he's somebody who is well known throughout the league. He makes people miss, as you saw there in that highlight against that terrible Detroit Lions team. So anything against Detroit Lions, you gotta question. Well, it is against the Detroit Lions, but he has done some other things against some teams, and you see him. He can get deep and open. So Kiki Cote is another guy who you can be potentially plucked out of the practice squad, and now you've got a receiver or 2. You got a body. Is what you got. You got a body.
Good. We're filling the roster out. It's like whenever you're trying to, you only have like 11. You only have like 10 kids for your peewee team, so you just start walking up and down the street. Hey, you want to play football? We got uniforms and everything. We play over at Soldier Field. Yeah, we're the Bears. You want to come play receiver for us?
That is exactly right.
We'll get you
but I didn't want to give you the Denzel Mims, and these names that have been regurgitated over and over again. Kenny Golladay to the Bears. I don't care if they drop the guy. I don't want that guy anywhere near Hallis Hall. And Greg Gabriel assures me that touching Denzel Mims would be a huge mistake. That guy is not reliable wide receiver, so he's not on my list either.
Yeah, and like I said before, what draft capital are you going to give up for a guy that we can put a mannequin in there? I like that.
Great.
But if you look at the Bears game plan, they're running the ball a lot. and they're not passing the ball that much. And I understand that you want to surround your quarterback with weapons, but are you going to give up a 3rd, 4th round pick for somebody in the middle of this year? Like, I mean, do we remember? I mean, not that it was like a huge, they only gave, I think it was a 7th round pick, but you remember when they traded for Dontrell Inman in 2017 because they needed warm bodies, because I think that was the year that both Cam Meredith and Kevin White both got hurt, so they weren't playing at all. So that was the Kendall Wright, Marcus Wheaton, Dontrell Inman, Jeremy Bellamy year, and like it was almost similar to this. Not quite as this year's not quite as bad as that. So I use that as the benchmark. But they go and trade for Dontrell Inman, and I think he caught like 20 passes. Maybe he caught a touchdown. Is if you're trading for somebody, are you just trying to find a body for the rest of this year? Or are you looking for a guy that's going to be, if you're trading for him, is he going to be part of the long-term plan? My guess is Ryan Poles is not going to give up a late round pick for a guy that's only going to play 8 or 9 games, and he has to get up to speed with the system.
I totally agree with you. I think he's got a plan. And one of the things we've learned about Ryan Poles in these few months that he's been here in Chicago is that he is a very disciplined general manager. He's not going to deviate from this plan. I'm sure when it came down to those 2 picks in the 2nd round, that there were probably offensive linemen and wide receivers that he was tempted to pick, got to help out our quarterback and so forth. But they collectively made the decision that those 2 picks that they did acquire were higher up on their board than any of the offensive linemen, any of the wide receivers available, and that the defense had a defensive backfield problem. That was a collective agreement when they looked at the tape from 2021, and something that we didn't pay that much attention to as Chicago Bears fans because we were so worried about the offense, but it was clear that even our best players, Jalen Johnson, the cornerback, and Eddie Jackson, were suffering because they didn't have other supporting players to work with. And look at what's happened with Eddie Jackson this season now that he's got Jaquan Brisker with him. His play has improved. I mean, he is on a Pro Bowl pace, so we might see him play flag football this
or whatever the hell they're doing now with the which, by the way, I'm glad. Like, the Pro Bowl has been, I don't think I've watched the Pro Bowl since I was maybe in elementary school. The skills competition I think is awesome. I used to play NFL quarterback club on PlayStation, and it had the skills competition where you'd run around, the speed and agility, the long toss to see who could throw the ball the farthest, and the fastest man in the NFL kind of stuff. So I'd like to watch that. I'm not trying to turn this into a Pro Bowl podcast because I want people to listen, but but at the same time, I think that the only team that I think I would be if the Steelers were willing to part with Chase Claypool, because they just paid Deontay Johnson, they drafted George Pickens, who I wouldn't have been upset if the Bears would have drafted, but they have those 2 guys that I think that they're fully invested in. Chase Claypool could find himself as the odd man out in that trio, and if it comes to the trade deadline and the Steelers don't look like they're in playoff contention, and the Bears maybe give up a 4th round pick, 5th round pick, he was
a 1st rounder, right?
I think he was a 2nd rounder.
Okay,
second rounder out of Notre Dame. Yeah. So because I don't think he has a 5th-year option, I'm pretty sure he was a 2nd rounder. And so if you're able to get him, flip him for a 4th or a 5th because you think you're going to lose him anyway, I would certainly do that. Just because I think that he's a guy that, with his athleticism and his skill set, he could be a guy that you re-sign on a pretty moderate contract, and he can be a big-time contributor. I don't think he's a number 1, but I think that he could be a big-time, him, Mooney, and then maybe drafting a guy next year. That would be way better than what they have now. But
I'm a big fan of Claypool. I really wanted the Bears to draft him coming out of college, and he's a wide receiver with a tight end's body, so he's that physical guy. He can get behind the defensive backs with his speed. He's also an excellent player on special teams. He's a good blocker downfield, so he's got all of the check marks for a Chicago Bears type of wide receiver. I would love to do that. If they could work something out where I would consider trading like a 3rd and a 4th for Claypool, but first, knowing that you can sign him, and not just risk. Exactly. And then a couple of guys in the chat room have talked about EQ perhaps should be the number 1 receiver and move Darnell Mooney to the number 2 slot like he was with Allen Robinson that might improve his play and take some of the focus, or the defensive backfield focus, away from Mooney. That's an interesting thought. And let's not forget also that Velus Jones is close to coming back. He practiced a bit last week. And at today's press conference, Justin Fields was asked about what he brings to the offense, what he could potentially bring to the offense. And but before that, Flus gave us an update on his condition.
Hopefully Velus can be up for us this game. We'll see where that goes in terms of the injury that he's had. Hopefully that can happen this week.
I think Velus, in his timeout, he's been really locking in on the plays. Even on some of the no-huddle plays, even though he's not going to play that week, he's still locked in. So he's been locked in mentally and just preparing himself like each week, like he's playing.
Could you guys really need that? Could you really use him right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can definitely use him. I mean, he's a great athlete. He's great with the ball in his hand. So.
What do you think his speed, if Velus can go this week, what can his speed provide this offense that maybe it's been missing?
Yeah, I mean, it provides a lot of stuff, Like I said, if you just get the ball to him with his hands, he can do a lot with that. And then, of course, he can, help stretch the defense vertically just with the speed. So, yeah.
John, I'd love to see him play 15 snaps and at least try to get him 2 or 3 wide receiver screen passes to see what he can do after he catches those high percentage passes, and then go a couple of times deep with him, whether it's as a somebody to help fool the defense and drag the defense back for passes underneath, or help the running game and so forth. He would be such a huge addition. I don't expect him to have 100-yard passing day or receiving day and a couple of touchdowns, but he could make an impact right away if he plays.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that he brings that. He's a very dynamic player. And I think when they drafted him, they thought that he could be kind of that Deebo Samuel kind of guy. He can return the ball. You could hand the ball on end arounds. You can blow the lid off of the defense with his speed. So to have that at your disposal, that you can kind of, even like you said, even use it as a decoy to try to open some other things up in the middle would go a long way. And so, I mean, like I said before, they did draft a receiver to try to help Justin Fields. The problem is he's been hurt. He hasn't been able to get on the field yet. So hopefully, like you said, you ease him into it, 15 snaps, and you have some design plays with him in there. You get the ball in his hands, you see what he can do, or at the very least, take a few defenders down the field with him, and so see if you can open things up in the middle for either Cole Kmet or whoever else is going to be, sitting in a soft zone somewhere, if that's how they plan to do it. And especially, we know this game, Wink Martindale is going to be bringing the pressure. They're going to blitz Justin Fields a lot. He may be having to roll out quite a bit. There could be opportunities for big plays down the field. There could be some opportunities for Mooney to use his speed, for Velus Jones to use his speed. If they're gonna just leave people out on an island, or there's gonna be limited amount of support in the secondary because they're bringing a lot of guys at the quarterback, you want to see some splash plays. I'd like to see some splash plays. So let's hope that Velus Jones can get on the field, because I'm really excited to see what he can do once he gets on there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked about this on Sunday. This is a running team, but they're, the fact that they're running so effectively and not being able to capitalize with play action, because there should be receivers wide open downfield when you've got such a great rushing attack, and there are receivers downfield, but Justin seems to be locked in on Mooney. When that's not happening, he's just missing a wide open guy here or there, and they're not getting that many pass attempts so that he can make up for that, because the Bears want to win games. And the formula is the old Lovey formula: get off the bus, running the ball, and play good defense, and you're going to stay in games. And Eberflus has done a tremendous job getting these guys fit, both physically and mentally, so that in the fourth quarter, they're feeling good about their chances to win. We saw it even in the Green Bay Packers game. They did not give up in that game and had a chance to win it late, despite a putrid performance.
And could have taken it to a 1-score game if that Justin Fields rush is called a touchdown. You have a little bit of a game there. They certainly didn't get embarrassed. But speaking of Justin Fields, and I know that's just what everyone's going to be talking about, because you want to see your franchise quarterback take the next step. And I believe we had a question back in the chat room that I wanted to get back to eventually. It was by Joe Treviso, was what would Fields have to accomplish this year to show he can become a franchise quarterback? I think that's a sliding scale because I honestly think that the expectations have to be realistic from not just fans, but from the coaching staff and from the front office to know this is what he's dealing with. He doesn't have the weapons around him that some of the other quarterbacks have. So let's see what he does. Let's see what he does as far as what he can control. How is he going through his progressions? Is he being decisive? And there's a whole thing about, I believe today he said that he's not being hesitant with his throws, and a lot of fans were getting on him and say that it looks like he's being hesitant with his throws. So I think that you have to look at this holistically. I don't think you can make any kind of decision in week 4. I don't think you can make any decision in week 7, 8, or 9. I think that you have to take this season as it is at the end of the year to see where he started. And if week 1 is drastically different than week 17, and if you can see that this is a different guy over the course of a season, then you say, okay, we're still rolling with this guy. And I don't think that you can make a real decision about that until you get him the right kind of weapons. The whole Tua thing in Miami. Let's go out and get Jalen Waddle, and then let's go get Tyreek Hill, and let's have 2 ridiculously fast guys on the outside, and we'll have Gesicki as the tight end, and we'll try to get you Chase Edmonds is a pretty good running back. So let's surround the guy with weapons to see what he does with that. And Tua threw for 6 touchdowns a couple weeks ago. So it's amazing what can happen when you surround your quarterback with talent. So I don't know if you can even make a hard decision at the end of this year. You can have a better idea. Like, you can tell if a guy is a complete flop. Which I don't think Justin Fields is. But I really don't know if you can even make that assessment until you put some real weapons around him.
Totally agree with that. Not only does he need weapons, but he needs an offensive line that is going to provide the type of pockets that all of the great passers have. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has for many, many years had an outstanding offensive line. One of the things that he did early in his career is he held the ball a long, long time and created plays. And that was because the offensive line was, they would give him 4 or 5 seconds. Yeah, he had to scramble around. He didn't stay in the pocket for 4 or 5 seconds, although it seemed like he did with some games against the Chicago Bears. But he had an offensive line where he would feel comfortable. And so that's my biggest concern with Justin Fields. There's the old proverbial saying, don't rush him into action until you got protection for him because you'll make him gun shy and so forth. And so sometimes I wonder about that because he does seem a bit skittish when he's in the pocket. And then at today's press conference, listening to him talk, sometimes in other press conferences, I've detected this too. He just sounds either tired or bored, doesn't want to be there with the local media and so forth. Well, he was asked today, after your performance, which you described as being trash, what's your psychological makeup? And this was his response.
I mean, I've had bad games before. This isn't my first bad game that I've ever had. So, again, just looking at the past, what can you do to get better? What can you do to improve? Just how you look at situations that maybe have you had in the past like this, and what you do to respond to it. So we have a guy here for mental health. So if I'm ever down that bad, I can go talk to him. But really just learning from your mistakes, knowing that you're not gonna be perfect, and just moving on, and just accepting the fact that we won the game. It's easier to correct mistakes after winning the loss, of course. So, just correcting each and every mistake, and, just trying to be better in every aspect.
He's a guy who likes to, for lack of a better way of putting it, likes to have a chip on his shoulder. He likes to prove the naysayers wrong. And so maybe that's where his headspace is right now. I hope that he isn't as dejected as he sounds, because didn't he sound dejected to you?
Yeah, it seemed like he didn't want to be there, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to have to keep answering the same questions over and over again. I love the fact that he referenced that if he needed to talk to the mental health professional, he would. I love hearing that, just because he's not quote unquote too macho to admit that some people need to talk to somebody sometimes. So I can certainly appreciate that aspect, especially coming from a 23-year-old kid. So but yeah, I think that this is going to be a process, and he understands the processes that he's in. He understands the situation he is in. I mean, I think the coaches understand the situations he's in. I think that he doesn't like losing. I think that he gets irritable when he loses because he doesn't like to lose. And like I said before, I like a guy that gets ticked off when they lose. So this is just another one of those things that he's going to have to work through. Like when you lose, the media is going to keep asking the same questions over and over again. They probably didn't do that at Ohio State because they didn't lose that much. So when you lose in the NFL, in the Chicago media market, they're going to keep asking you and asking you and asking you and asking you, and you're gonna get irritated at times. And this is part of those growing pains. And just a quick, because somebody asked, and I don't know why I did this, but somebody asked who the free agents are at the wide receiver position for 2023. Oh, it ain't pretty.
No, it's not.
We're topping the charts with Nelson Aguilar, Sterling Shepard, who just tore his ACL, DJ Shark, Randall Cobb, Marvin Jones, Julio Jones, Byron Pringle, Alan Lazard, Jacoby Myers, Juju Smith-Schuster, AJ Green, Jarvis Landry. Any of those names making you go crazy? Sammy Watkins, Zach Pascal, Keelan Cole, Brashard Perryman, Marquise Goodwin, McCole Hardman. Ew. Oh, man.
And so all of those guys, John, are available right now.
I was saying the majority of those guys that I just rattled off are actually you can probably sign right now outside of a couple. Yeah, so none of those names are. You're gonna have to draft somebody, or like I said before, if a wide receiver who's in trench number one gets disgruntled, like let's just say Tom Brady retires and Mike Evans is like, I don't want to play here anymore. Whoever they bring in, I'm not playing for this guy. And the Bears will give you, a 2 and a 3 or 2 2s or whatever it is for Mike Evans. And then you can still draft a guy at number 1. Then, okay. I can get on board with that. But, I'm not sure. It's not looking good in free agency, even though we have a lot of cap.
I do agree with J2K. Alan Lazard is the best wide receiver. Greg Gabriel and I talked about him a lot during the offseason. He was a restricted free agent. We knew the Packers were going to make it comfortable for him to stay another year, but he will be an unrestricted free agent. And I bet that, he had 10 touchdowns the year before last, or I think it was last season he had 10 touchdowns. And now without Devontae Adams, he's probably for sure going to have another 10 touchdown catches. He's going to be a hot commodity. He's another one of those wide receivers that fits the Bears mold. Big target, can block downfield, has relatively good speed for a big guy. He's an interesting candidate out there, but one of the things that Ryan Poles has kind of indicated is that he's not going to pay the Christian Kirk kind of dollars for a wide receiver. So if Lazard is going to be in that position, then bypass him and try to find a diamond in the rough.
That's the problem. Whenever the market's bad and you might be the best receiver in a bad market, Alan Lazard is probably looking at this licking his chops because he's like, I'm the best receiver out of this garbage free agency pool. So I'm going to get overpaid because I'm the one asset out of all of these that people might actually want to see or might actually want to sign. So that's very true. The Alan Lazard could price himself out of Chicago, which I'm sure he'll be devastated for. But he could get paid. So let's not worry too much about free agency. What is it? Week 4, the Bears are 2-1. It's okay. It's all right.
Hey, somebody mentioned, I forgot to save it here, but somebody mentioned, I think it was Joe. Was it Joe? How many more years do you have to determine whether Justin Fields is the guy or not? And here's the thing with that. If Justin Fields doesn't show any noticeable improvement right now, I think that the approach Ryan Poles is going to take is, okay, who's available for us at quarterback? And is that quarterback better than Justin Fields or has more potential than Justin Fields? So if the Bears are picking in the top 10 of the draft, in the top 5, and there's a quarterback there and they weigh him against Justin Fields, I wouldn't at all be surprised if Ryan Poles pulled the trigger on that. But I do think in my heart that I believe we're going to see improvement from Justin Fields so that by the end of the season, at the very least, that bar of who could replace Justin Fields is going to be a lot higher than it appears to be right now.
Yeah, I can't get on board with dumping him after the season just because of what is there right now. It would take me another probably full season to be ready to be like, okay, it's time to move on. If they're able to go through another off season with all the cap space they have, and let's hope that they bring in some more around him. It would take at least another season for me to be like, all right, time to move on from this guy. I did see an article today already about 3 potential, options if Justin Fields is a bust, and that's after this season. And the names, I think it was on thewindycity.com. I'm trying to give as much credit as I can. I just can't really remember where I saw it. It was Jimmy Garoppolo. It was drafting a guy, and then oh god, I'm never gonna remember the other person that was on there that was on that list. But it was damn, I can't think of it. But anyway, it was drafting a guy or like Jimmy Garoppolo that was like the options if Justin Fields bust out this year. It's just hard for me to say go get a quarterback whenever there's a lot of other positions of need and you're still not overly sure if Justin Fields is the guy or not. So I would give him one more year. They gave Mitch 4 years, so 3.5-ish kind of. But I think that you got to give him at least next year with another full cycle of this GM and this head coach. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the team knows that they did Justin Fields very few favors during the offseason, and if they're going to be harsh with their grading of Justin Fields based on the fact that they've got a ragtag offensive line, a guy they picked up from the Green Bay Packers who was, I don't even think Lucas Patrick was drafted, or maybe he wasn't, but it was a low draft pick, and you've got a 5th round draft pick at your left tackle position, at another 5th round draft pick at your right tackle position, a offensive guard at left guard who really doesn't deserve to be paid the kind of money he's being paid, and a center that everybody in town can't wait for Sam Mustipher to grab some bench. And then Tevin Jenkins is your best offensive lineman. So, they have to know that this isn't doing Justin Fields any favor. They have to know that these journeyman wide receivers, Pettis and Equinemius St. Brown, aren't doing him any favors. And so unless they're seeing something in practice and in the meeting rooms that we have not been privy to, like he's falling asleep in the meeting rooms, he's really not as smart as people say, or
there's no indication of that.
There's no indication of that. So they have to be realistic and say, okay, we need to give this guy another shot. But I still hold true to my point that if for some reason all of a sudden if they look at, let me ask you that, if they look at Jimmy Garoppolo and he's available for a relatively good salary, would they then say, okay, we're going to pick up Jimmy Garoppolo and he's going to be our number 1 quarterback in 2023 if Justin Fields fails to perform at a high level the rest of the season?
I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that you bring in if you think that you're gonna win a Super Bowl and you're just a quarterback away kind of thing. And I don't know if the Bears are gonna feel like they're a Super Bowl contender in 2023. So what are you gonna do paying Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million a year for 2 years? And plus, I think he's already in his early 30s or whatever he is. You know what you're getting. I think that the ceiling has probably been hit with Jimmy Garoppolo. By the way, that I looked up that article while you were talking. It's actually by Vinny Parisi. So,
my man Vinny.
Yeah, so it was draft a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, or go all in on Lamar Jackson, which I'm not sure. I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, that's a fun thought. Everyone loves speculation. I don't think the Bears are going to get Lamar Jackson. But I don't see a scenario where they go and they overpay or even pay Jimmy Garoppolo whenever they have a young team that they're trying to start the course with, and they're not going to take a huge chunk out of that and say we're a Jimmy Garoppolo away from being in the NFC Championship game. I don't think that's where they're at necessarily. So there's a lot of things that have to happen. There's a lot of things that have to play out for this year. Like I said, the biggest interest point for me going into this year was there was so many unknowns, and we're starting to see a little bit of it, but where there's still a lot that needs to be answered. We're getting some answers about the wide receiving core. We're going to see as the defense progresses how good this defense can actually be once, Gordon and Brisker keep progressing, see how good Eddie Jackson can be. And we're starting to see that a little bit. We're starting to see how good Roquan Smith can be and what's going to happen with him with his contract. So there's still a lot of questions that need answered. We're still in the first quarter of the season. So a lot has to play out, but there's more talking points than there were last year.
Yeah, that's for sure. Jimmy has a interesting point, one that I'd love to discuss with you. He says that he doesn't like the plan as it exists now. It doesn't state that if we are rebuilding, he writes, or are we playing for the playoffs? If we are rebuilding, then let us see what we have in Justin Fields and stop running the ball. So let me offer my thoughts first on this. I think you owe it to all the veterans on that team, starting with Robert Quinn and Eddie Jackson and every other veteran on that team, to try to win games at the early part of the season, because you just never know. If you are winning games by running the ball and playing good defense, then why not continue that? And maybe Justin Fields will develop even with the limited amount of throws that you're asking him to do. Maybe by week 8 or 9, he is not staring down Darnell Mooney and he is spotting the open man. Both of those things are possible. So you have to, for the sake of keeping the clubhouse happy, all those veterans happy, and even new guys, you want to establish a winning culture, you have to first and foremost factor in, how do we win this game? And then secondly is, how do we develop this quarterback to help us win games? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's, and honestly, I didn't think of that. And so I'm glad that you said that, because you play in the beginning of the season, you're playing to win games. You don't want to go into the season saying, hey guys, I know you've been in the league for 6 years, but we're not playing to win. We're gonna let the rookie toss the ball around 40 times, and all of a sudden, and then you got guys pissed off in the media saying, I don't know what we're doing, or you could cause a rift in the locker room, you could cause a schism between the players, the offense and the defense, or whatever. But I think once, let's just say they're out of playoff contention week 11 or whatever it is, or it's obvious they're not going to make the playoffs by week 10 or 11, then maybe you start opening it up a little bit. You see what you got in Justin Fields, because the season, at least in the present tense, is done. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to make the playoffs. So then you start seeing, and plus you got Justin Fields 8 or 9 games into the season. You work him in. He knows the system a little bit better. So then you start tossing it around and see what you actually have in the quarterback. But like you said, I think you owe it to the players to say, hey, what if we fall ass backwards into a 5-1 record? Are we still just going to, toss the season away so we can see what we got in our young quarterback? So I think you see what you got. I'm not saying the Bears are going to the playoffs. I don't think they're going to the playoffs. I don't believe that they're going to the playoffs. But stranger things have happened, and I think you owe it to the guys on the field to try to win those games. And I'm having a little bit of a change of heart, because I said something very different on the halftime show last week, because I was pissed off they didn't try to score. I'm still pissed off they didn't try to score. I wish they would have tried to do that. But I let that sink into my overall opinion, and I wish I wouldn't have done that. But I'm starting to I understand the fact that you're trying to win games and you're trying to see what you got. And plus, you're seeing what you got in your running game. You're seeing what you got in Khalil Herbert. You're seeing what you got in this offensive line. They can run block. We're seeing that. And so I think you can do an overall evaluation of a team without having to throw the ball 40 or 50 times. So I'm totally on board now. I will admit, whenever I overreacted, and I overreacted on that.
You overreact? Get out of here.
You believe that I would let my emotions blur what I'm saying. That's so unlike me. That's so not in tune with what this show is about. not like I do an entire show about overreacting. Here we are. So, I will admit when I overreact. I will admit I will always reserve the right to change my mind upon thinking a little more clearly. So
you're a better man than me.
Yeah, I will always admit when I overreact. I will always admit when I'm wrong. I overreact, and I'm going to keep overreacting. But you try to win. You try to win those games. You try to see what you got for those guys in the locker room. If you can win the game by running the ball 30 times, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the progression with Justin Fields will come. But like I said before, eventually you will have to win a shootout. If you're gonna beat Green Bay, if you're gonna beat some of these other teams, you're gonna beat Tampa, you're gonna beat Philadelphia. You are gonna have to throw the ball and win the game throwing the ball. And if the Bears are out of contention at some point this season, I think you have to ramp that up.
Caesar brings up an interesting point that sparked off this idea in my head. He writes, shit, just let Justin hand off the ball to himself and run the ball. How about if they devise a play where Justin Fields can somehow lateral to himself, just lob it high enough so he can run and catch it and run? That could be a great play. I don't know.
I mean, you could, as long as it's behind him, you're not passing it to yourself.
Right.
What the hell are we doing? What are we doing right now? We're devising ways for the quarterback to lateral it to himself. What are we doing?
It's hump day. It's how you the past week.
I was gonna say we've been on the air for too long that we're talking about Justin Fields going lateral to himself. So let's wrap this up. Let's go out on that. The Bears fans are at a point where the podcasters are saying, "How can Justin Fields toss the ball to himself?" There's an idea. All right. Before.
Oh, Lordy.
For a different show. Before we wrap things up, I know we got a ton of programming coming up on the Barroom Network. Who's on the Bear Debate?
The Bear Debate, we've got our very own Ross Reed from the Mac and Reed show. They're actually taking the week off from their show, which is on Thursdays at 7 p.m. because Mac is getting married. And but Ross is in town, and he is going to battle Kenneth Davis from the Under the Center podcast. So we've got two heavyweights going at it tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central Time. And so that's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And then earlier in the day, it's one of the season's final episodes of Crosstown Crosstalk with Vinny Parisi. And he had a great show on today. If you're a hockey fan, you should really check it out. Tab Bamford, for Blackhawk fans, they know the name. Tab has been writing about the Blackhawks for many years. He's very well known as a very perceptive media person of the Chicago Blackhawks. He was the guest on Bar Down Hockey Talk today, and they looked at the entire Central Division. And they also had some fun talking Chicago Bears football, too. So that was a great show that was on today. But tomorrow's the Bear Debate and Crosstown Crosstalk. And then following this show tonight, it's the Science Fiction show. The guys are going to talk about Hugh Jackman making a return as Wolverine in one of the upcoming Marvel movies. So that's going to be an interesting show they'll have. I
almost gave a spoiler there because I saw the promo for it today. I'm very excited about. I'm not like a Marvel or DC person, but when I saw this promo, I got excited because I happen to really like what's going. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to be that guy. But also make sure after the game on Sunday, you tune into Bear Football. Myself, Danny Shimon, and Tyler Gaines Ellis with Aldo in the background, going over that raw emotion and overreaction I was just talking about. There's plenty of that to go on after the Bears game. And also at halftime, we have a little report there as well. So Bear Football, the second that the clock hits 000, we will be on the air talking about hopefully a Chicago Bears victory where they are 3-1. We are banking on that. But that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. Aldo, hey, your pinch hitting was pretty good today. I'll give you that. You dusted off the old skills.
I'm fatigued. I need to go to bed.
Once again, all of our thoughts and prayers over with Alyssa and everyone down in Florida battling that hurricane. Stay safe. Hope to talk to you soon. But that'll do it for Buffone 55. I'm John Buffone for Aldo Gandia. We will see you next week. Bear down, everybody.
Take care.